So let's just look at some of the common and key render settings that you need just to get an image out of Cinema 4D. Okay, so we can come up to our edit render settings here, which is Command B, and let's just have a look at what we've got. In Release 18, the preset has changed from 800 by 600. It's finally in a 16 by 9 format, so it's 1280 by 720. Now, I always lock the ratio because then I can type in just 1920 and Cinema will just calculate the height for me. Or I can just choose to divide by 2 and then I can get a low res version. So I'm going to reset that back to 1920. Next thing we can look at is the frame rate and just double check that it matches our project settings. And it does, which is great. And then you would set your frame range. Now this could be, if you're just doing a quick test, current frame is great, or you can just choose a manual range and you can just choose it to all frames. Or if you have a preview range set up in the timeline, you can choose that also. Currently we're previewing the whole lot. If you see I'm moving the slider back here and the preview range is changing accordingly. Let's just set that back to current frame for now. And I'd always advise you to come back to this panel and just double check those output settings before you hit go. And so now we will look at the save. And just to get an image out, you can just use this regular image. We will look at multi-pass images and compositing a bit later on. So you actually have to make sure it is checked on to save, and then you can get this file field and you can use tokens, which we'll take a look at later, to have some handy naming conventions for your files. But really the main one here is this button where you can actually choose a location to save your files. So with an image sequence, always advisable to put it in a folder. Otherwise, if we were just to call this render.png or whatever, all the files would just be stuck on our desktop. So we can organize them into a new folder. So I'm just going to cancel that. And then I'd choose a format, and I did type in .png, but I would choose PNG because it's lossless. You can render 16-bit, which is great for when you're doing linear workflow, which is this. As you know, in our project settings, we have that on, and it's basically the make everything look good button. I would not render to a compressed format. There's no point really. You want to have all that color and depth information, so I wouldn't advise that. Other formats such as OpenEXR will hold 32 bits per channel, which is lots of control. It's up to you really. Have a look through these and see what you think. If you're doing a preview, which we will come back to later on, you possibly could do QuickTime. So the reason for doing an image sequence is because if your computer crashes or Cinema 4D does something bad, then you can stop it at that point and then pick it up where you left off. If you had a QuickTime movie, for example, if it goes bad, it goes completely bad. So that's why image sequences are preferable. Now you can turn on alpha channels as well, and that's if your format supports it. And these can be straight, or they would be pre-multiplied with black if you didn't have a background or something. So just bear that in mind depending on how you're going to composite this. We will come over now to the anti-aliasing options, and by default geometry set. This can just improve the edging of your geometry. You can set this up to best and choose a minimum and maximum level. These can really go crazy and you can really increase your render times and not see a huge improvement. It depends on how close you are to the object. If you're really far away, you wouldn't really want to set them up too high because you just wouldn't see the benefit. So I usually set mine down a bit. And I've been using the animation filter when I'm doing animations. It's a bit softer than the still image, but you can smooth out the anti-aliasing a bit better. So I would say experiment with those and see what works for you. So that's just a quick overview of the common render settings you'd need to turn on in order to get an image out of Cinema 4D.